For 3 years, my wife carried on her affair. Then the system that had brought me to this world finally reappeared and told me I could go home. During those last 10 days, I stopped fighting. I stopped trying to tear us apart. I let her spend her nights with her new obsession. I let her give away the things that had once meant everything to me. The day I left was my birthday. She burst in with him, knocking my cake to the floor and pinning me against the window. She accused me of trying to harm their child. "When did you become so vicious?" she demanded. I laughed, too exhausted to explain. "You're right," I said. "I really am that vicious." Then I looked at her and at him and told them, "Have a good life." As she watched, I leaned back and fell from the 19th floor, ending my life in that world. When the long-dormant system flickered back to life, I had just finished another screaming match with Chloe. She had come home from a trip with Julian, the college student she was funding. She saw me lying in bed and slid in behind me, her lips warm as they traced my neck. I shot upright, instinctively shoving her away. "Chloe," I said, "you might not feel dirty, but I do." She froze for a moment, then touched her face with a self-mocking smirk. She yanked me out of bed and slammed me in front of the bathroom mirror, her fingers clamping around my chin, her eyes filled with venom. "You're disgusted by me, Leo. Look at yourself. Do you see any trace of the man you used to be?" I stared at my reflection. My hair was a mess. My stubble was uneven. The dark circles beneath my eyes looked like bruises. The optimism that once defined me was gone, replaced by a hollow gray emptiness. Fine lines had crept across my face, erasing any trace of my former vitality. For a split second, Julian's face flashed through my mind, young, fiery, his eyes burning with ambition and desire. "So what, Chloe?" I scoffed, leaning against the wall, my eyes stinging. "Is that your excuse for cheating on me?" She stepped closer, standing on her toes to gently trace the corner of my eye with her thumb. "I've told you 100 times. I'm just having fun. When I get bored, I'll come back. Leo, I've always loved you." Nausea churned in my stomach. Disgust, pain, and fury surged through me all at once. I grabbed a bottle of cologne from the counter and hurled it at the mirror. Glass shattered into a web of cracks. "Get out!" I roared. "Just get the hell out." After she left, I stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, staring out the window at the massive digital billboard across the street. It was a new campaign she had funded for Julian, a full-body modeling shot of him smirking down at the city. I let out a bitter laugh. Fights like this had become routine over the past year, a painful ritual that had shifted from raw agony to numb despair. I was never meant to be in this world. 8 years ago, I was sent here on a mission to save a tragic, broken protagonist, Chloe Sterling. Her father's affair had bankrupted the family company. Her mother had taken her own life. She was buried under debt, her eyes empty and lifeless. Then I arrived on a bright, sunny morning. I walked up to that fragile, defeated girl. I moved into her cramped studio apartment, and together we survived on ramen and dollar-slice pizza, slowly pulling her back from the edge of death. "Why are you so good to me?" she asked me once, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled and took her hand. "Maybe it's a directive from on high." She looked down and murmured, "They knew the best gift heaven ever gave me." On the day my mission was completed, she seemed to sense I was going to leave. She held me from behind, her eyes red, refusing to sleep. My resolve softened. I turned and held her close. "Chloe," I whispered, "I'm not going home." After that, the system vanished. For 5 years, it never appeared again. And in those 5 years, Chloe cheated on me. It started in the 3rd year of our marriage. She began sponsoring a young, beautiful male model named Julian. I still remember the day I found out. She came home drunk, collapsed against me, and mumbled, "Leo, have you gained weight?" I almost laughed. I worked out religiously. My body hadn't changed in years. Later, I looked through her phone. Julian was 6 feet tall, thin and angular, pale, my complete opposite. And the name she had whispered earlier, had it been Leo or Julian? The rest of that day is a blur. I only remember the roar in my ears as my world went dark. Chloe knelt before me, sobbing, swearing it was a mistake, a momentary lapse for something new. 3 years of dating. 3 years of marriage. Giving up my entire world for her. And this was where it led. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't let either of us off that easily. So, by silent agreement, we stayed married. But our love had rotted. It was like a beautiful rose infested with worms, too painful to throw away, too sickening to hold on to. Her repeated betrayals led to endless cycles of fights and resentment until we were both exhausted. Our hearts turned to ash. It was death by 1,000 cuts, slowly slicing away every last piece of love we had. So when the system finally awakened from its long slumber and spoke again, I answered without hesitation. System, I regret it. I want to go home. Host, I warned you. The storyline after mission completion is unpredictable, including Chloe's change of heart. However, due to your outstanding mission performance, I can grant you a one-time privilege and reopen the pathway home. There is one condition. The pathway will open in 10 days. Exhaustion sank into my bones. I nodded. Okay. You have 10 days remaining in this world. The departure countdown has begun. The system fell silent. The house returned to its suffocating quiet. I wiped my tears and began packing. I didn't want to leave a single trace of myself behind. I gathered my clothes, stuffed them into trash bags, and threw them out. I took down the wedding photos lining the hallway. I removed my wedding ring. When I proposed, I had knelt on one knee holding a modest half-carat diamond that had cost me everything. My voice shook as I asked, "Chloe, will you marry me?" She fell into my arms, crying. "Leo, you are the only light in my dark life. I will be faithful to you and only you for the rest of my days." That imperfect little diamond had once held the purest love we had ever shared. I wore it every day, until I saw her walking beside Julian, a 5-carat pink diamond glittering on her hand. After that, my ring was left forgotten in a drawer. Now I used that ring to smash the glass covering our wedding photos, shattering them one by one. When I was done, I stood there and looked around the home that held so much of our shared history, and a strange sense of peace washed over me. I had struggled in this toxic marriage for 5 years, clawing and fighting against the inevitable. Now, at last, I could leave. It felt like liberation. The next morning, I went downstairs. The lights were dim. Chloe was sitting on the sofa, sipping some kind of herbal wellness tea, her expression unreadable. "Where are the wedding photos?" she asked, her voice stopping me in my tracks. Her phone buzzed non-stop. It was Julian, sending her a picture of himself holding a new watch she had just bought him, a satisfied grin plastered on his face. "Babe, was I good last night or what? Love the gift. I'll make sure to be even better for you today." She saw that I noticed, but made no effort to hide the screen. "I put them away," I said calmly as I walked past her into the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. She smirked, stood up, and pulled a Van Cleef & Arpels watch from her pocket. She grabbed my wrist and fastened it around it. "Still mad?" she murmured, leaning close to my ear, her voice a low, hissing whisper. "Here, a little apology gift. It looks good on you." She paused, then added softly, "Leo, you will always be my husband. No one can replace you. Not even Julian. Why would I get bored of him? When I do, I'll come back to you. We can even have a baby then. How about that?" I pushed her away, my expression cold. I reached out and brushed the spot on her collar where the lingering scent of a man's cologne clung to the fabric. I forced a sarcastic smile and walked away. Chloe had been pregnant once before. She hadn't even known it at the time. Back then, I was still obsessed with her loyalty, still clinging to a desperate hope. I staked out the hotel where she was keeping Julian, sitting in my car all night. In the morning, I watched her come out with her arm wrapped around him. His hand rested possessively on her hip as he guided her into the passenger seat of her car. Moments later, the windows fogged up as they started going at it right there in the parking garage. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. A violent, uncontrollable rage overtook me, and I slammed my foot on the gas, plowing my car straight into theirs. The baby was lost in that collision. We hadn't slept together in months. It was obvious whose child it had been. She slapped me hard across the face and forced me to kneel and apologize. That was the fourth time I had caught them together. Now, Chloe watched me leave with a flicker of surprise, but no real alarm. She simply nodded thoughtfully and left the house. She didn't come home for 2 days. During that time, I calmly watched the tabloids fill with stories of her and Julian's latest escapades. I didn't call. I didn't text. Instead, I began liquidating the assets we had accumulated over the years, real estate, jewelry, everything. The system had told me I could exercise my conversion rights. Any wealth I earned in this world could be transferred to my home world. In the first 2 years of our marriage, before everything fell apart, we had worked relentlessly and built a small fortune. Those were our honeymoon years, when our love was at its peak. I had transferred my company entirely into her name. In return, every property she bought was registered under mine. She said she felt guilty for all the suffering I endured to pull her out of the abyss. She said only by giving me financial security could she feel at peace. In the end, she didn't give me enough love, but she gave me more than enough money, enough to live lavishly for the rest of my life, even after I went home. With 5 days left on the countdown, I drove out of the city. There was one last property I hadn't sold yet, a secluded estate in the Hudson Valley. It had been her anniversary gift to me. In happier times, we spent every holiday there. The house held special meaning for us. I was going there now to retrieve the deed and hand it over to the realtor. As I turned into the private driveway, I realized I hadn't been back in 2 years, not since the affair began. But the place looked different. The small garden had been meticulously replanted with rows of white roses. Confused, I got out of the car and unlocked the door. Before I could turn the handle, it swung open from the inside. What? You want more already? I just wore you out. It was Julian. Shirtless, leaning against the doorframe. His brief surprise quickly twisted into a smug, mocking grin. His eyes roamed over me, full of contempt and triumph. In that instant, I understood everything. Chloe had moved him in. "This is my house," I said quietly, my voice dangerously low. "You have 5 minutes to get dressed and get out." I pushed the door open, but he blocked my way, meeting my stare without fear. "Sorry, but Chloe gave this house to me." "Gave it to you? When was the title transferred? You think the owner wouldn't know? She's just letting you crash here for a few days. Don't confuse yourself into thinking you're the master of the house." His face flushed red, then drained pale. I didn't waste time arguing. I pulled out my phone and called Chloe. Her mess, her problem. On the other end, she scoffed dismissively. "Leo, it's just a house. What's the big deal if I let the kid stay there for a while? Don't bother him. If you make him cry, he's a handful to deal with. And another thing." I didn't hear the rest, because Julian suddenly grabbed my wrist, his voice dripping with provocation. "Mr. Vance, I hear you and Mrs. Sterling were together for 3 years before you got married. Well, I've been with her for 3 years too. What do you think my chances are of becoming the next Mr. Sterling?" He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "And I'll raise the stakes. I'll add the baby in Chloe's belly to my side of the bed." Through the phone, I heard poker chips clinking and Chloe's distracted voice. There was a limited edition artist sculpture up for auction. I bought it for you. It'll be your birthday gift. She was still trying to placate me. Keeping Julian around is just for fun, like a pet. If you're really upset, I'll tell him to move out. I let out a cold, trembling laugh. Chloe, did you hear him? You're pregnant with your little boy toy's child. Congratulations. You're finally going to be a mother. The line went dead. When Chloe finally found me, I was just leaving a cemetery. I had 3 days left. Julian's words had dragged up memories of that other child, the one I had once believed was mine, the one I had poured all my hopes into, only to realize the timing was impossible. Over the past few days, I had visited the child's small grave, leaving pieces of candy. I knew the baby wasn't mine, but the feelings refused to disappear. If none of this had happened, we might have had a beautiful child of our own. I hadn't gone home. I hadn't answered any of Chloe's calls. It was as if I had vanished. So when she finally saw me, she grabbed me and shoved me into her car without a word. Inside, her hands gripped the steering wheel. She looked at me long and hard, her voice sharp with impatience. I'll handle Julian. She once told me, a child should be born from true love. I will only ever have a child with you, Leo. And yet now she was pregnant with Julian's child, still trying to play the role of the devoted wife. The irony was suffocating. I folded my arms and stared out the window. What does that have to do with me? The kid's not mine. Her gaze turned icy, then she laughed, a short, sharp sound. She grabbed my wrist, forcing me to look at her. Leo, are you saying you really don't care at all? Her eyes were red, as if she were terrified to miss even the smallest flicker of emotion. And where have you been for 2 days? Why didn't you answer your phone? My face remained blank. I looked at her and whispered, Chloe, I'm going home. The car filled with heavy silence. After a moment, she laughed coldly, as if I'd told the greatest joke in the world. Home? Where are you going to go? What home do you have besides me? Do you have anyone else in this world? I watched her quietly, bitterness rising in my throat. So this was what the end of love looked like, cruel words meant only to hurt. I took a deep breath and said nothing. I got out of the car. She slammed her fist into the steering wheel and sped away. In the last 3 days, she grew more brazen. Sometimes she brought Julian home overnight, the sounds from their room echoing through the house. I would quietly close my door, not even bothering to ask. The final day before my departure was my birthday. That morning, Chloe left early without so much as a glance at me. I spent the entire day alone, methodically burning every photograph of us. That night, I waited for midnight. I bought myself a small cake and placed a single candle on it. I turned off the lights, closed my eyes, and made a wish. I wished for a smooth return home. I wished that Chloe and I would never see each other again. Before I could blow out the candle, the front door burst open. Chloe stormed in, her face pale and eyes cold. Julian followed behind her, his face twisted with rage. Before I could react, his fist slammed into my jaw. Leo, I know you don't like me, he snarled. But Chloe is innocent. And so is the baby. Why do you have to hurt her? I touched my stinging cheek and laughed bitterly. I honestly had no idea what he was talking about. I hadn't gone anywhere all day, but I knew his confidence came directly from Chloe. She stood off to the side, one hand on her stomach, a cold smile on her lips. Leo, isn't this a bit much? You already killed one of my children. Did you really have to send someone to crash into my car and try to kill the second one too? Her words cut like razors, but I didn't have time to argue anymore. The system reminded me I had only minutes left. I walked past Chloe and slapped Julian across the face, payback for his punch and a small reward for being the other man for 3 years. If I didn't do it now, I never would. Julian stared at me in shock, his eyes filling with performative hurt. Chloe rubbed her temples, then violently yanked the tablecloth off the table. Plates and glasses shattered. The cake smashed onto the floor, a perfect metaphor for my last 5 years of marriage. She strode toward me, her 4-inch heels bringing her face level with my chin. The warmth was gone from her eyes, replaced by cold cruelty. "I told you I would handle this. Why did you provoke us?" she spat. "Leo, when did you become so low, so vicious? Or is this just another pathetic attempt to get my attention?" Behind me, the window stood open. Wind roared in from the 19th floor. At that moment, the clock struck midnight. The system's voice filled my mind. "The pathway home is now open. Upon completion of your death in this world, you may return to your original world." I laughed softly and brushed Chloe's hand aside. "You're right," I said gently. "I really am that vicious." She frowned. I pointed at Julian and smiled. "I'll step aside. You and your Julian can be happy together." As Chloe stared in disbelief, I leaned back and fell from the 19th floor. 5 minutes later, a crowd gathered below. Police and paramedics arrived, but they found no body. There was no blood. Nothing at all. "Mrs. Sterling," an officer asked gently, "are you certain your husband jumped from the 19th floor?" Chloe stood frozen, staring up at the open window, rain streaking down her face. "I saw him," she whispered. "I saw him jump." Her voice trembled. "What about other places? The second-floor terrace? Someone must check the balconies, maybe he landed somewhere." The officer shook his head helplessly. "We've checked everywhere. There's no sign of him." The police were at a loss. Both Chloe and Julian insisted they had seen Leo Vance jump, yet there wasn't a trace of him to be found. It was as if he had simply evaporated into thin air. Julian was shaken to his core. A living person had leapt from a window right in front of him. From that height, he should have been reduced to nothing. But he had vanished. Wrapped in a shock blanket, he shivered as he approached Chloe, placing a hand lightly on her waist. "Let's go home. This is too weird. I'm scared." He didn't finish his sentence. A sharp slap from Chloe rang across his head, making him stumble back. She moved toward him, her face dark, carrying the overwhelming aura of power she had cultivated as a CEO over the years. She grabbed his throat, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Who told you to hit my husband?" Tears welled up in Julian's eyes. He bit his lip, looking utterly wronged. "You said you were bringing me here to confront him. I said I was coming to back you up, but you walked in and punched him. I never agreed to that." Her grip tightened, and Julian began to struggle for air. "Julian, if you hadn't insisted on making a scene about this baby, if you hadn't started all this tonight, Leo wouldn't have. I was going to terminate this pregnancy anyway. I only ever wanted to have a child for Leo." Julian looked at the woman before him, bloodshot eyes wide, face twisted with a rage so intense it seemed she could kill him. He started blacking out, using the last of his strength to pry at her fingers. "Chloe," he choked out. "You're still carrying our child." The name, Chloe, made her freeze. It was how Leo used to say her name, so gently, so tenderly. She snapped back to reality and released her grip. But the face she saw wasn't Leo's. It was Julian, red-faced and coughing violently. Chloe stood stunned for a moment, the chaos around her blurring into a haze. Among all the faces, the only one she wanted to see was gone. The brutal reality crashed down on her. 5 minutes ago, her Leo had jumped from the window in front of her. Now he was gone, presumed dead. Panic seized her. She stumbled away, a broken, desperate figure fleeing to her car. Inside, she huddled in the driver's seat, hands trembling as she lit a cigarette. Only after a long drag did her nerves begin to settle. She stared at her hand, the same hand that, in a moment of crazed grief, had nearly choked Julian to death. She suddenly remembered another rainy night years ago, when that very hand had been wrapped around another man's neck, her father's. She had been 19. Her father's affair had been exposed by the media. The family company's stock collapsed. He took his mistress and fled the country, leaving her and her mother drowning in debt. Overnight, the company went bankrupt, and her mother, in despair, had taken her own life. One night, she cornered him as he tried to escape for good. Her eyes were red with fury as she choked him, losing control. It was Leo who had thrown himself at her, grabbing her hands. "Chloe, no. Don't do it. You'll ruin your life." She could still remember the torrential rain that night, so loud it drowned out everything but Leo's desperate screams. Finally, she had let go. Leo held her, arms trembling, pulling her into a tight embrace. He convinced her to abandon her plan for revenge and start living again. Later, with his help, she found evidence of her father's illegal dealings and sent him to prison herself. She took over what remained of the company and built it into an empire. Leo was there through it all, networking for her, starting his own ventures to bring her clients, helping her conquer the market. They made a lot of money. She eventually married the man she loved more than life itself. The cigarette burned down, the cherry searing her skin. She snapped out of her memories, eyes wet with tears. It was late when Chloe got home. She had spent hours at the police station giving statements. All she had to show for it was a missing persons report. Without a body, the police couldn't issue a death certificate. For now, he was just gone. "Ms. Sterling, after 2 years, you can petition to have him declared legally dead." Chloe collapsed onto the sofa, laughing bitterly, tossing the report aside. Declared dead? He was playing a game with her. It had to be a ploy to make her come crawling back. She looked down at the floor, at the remains of the cake she had destroyed. The cold wind still whistled through the open window. Every detail was a stark reminder of what had really happened. Her Leo had really jumped. A deep, unshakable chill crept up from her feet, wrapping around her heart. She couldn't remain in the living room a second longer. She fled to the bedroom and lay down, her mind replaying the image of Leo smiling at her as he fell backward into the night. A sharp, splitting pain shot through her head. She pressed her fists against her temples to bear it. The migraines had started years ago, back when she was drowning in debt, working multiple jobs, pushing her body to the limit. But no matter how exhausted she was, she would come home to a small, run-down studio apartment and find him there. He was just as tired, but a warm, solid, reliable presence that made the hardship bearable. Their place had been a dump, it leaked in the winter and was infested with roaches in the summer. It wasn't a real home, but Leo never complained. He had made the tiny space feel cozy. They would lie on their thin mattress, her head on his lap as he massaged her temples. One night, as he did this, she noticed his hands. The once elegant and clean hands were now covered in red, swollen blisters from the cold. Some were festering. At that moment, something sharp twisted in her heart. She remembered holding his hands that night, vowing, "Leo, I swear I will make sure you have a good life. I swear it." And she had. She had become a titan of industry. Her Leo had gone from nobody to a respected businessman in his own right, her equal in the corporate world. They had moved from the studio to an apartment, then a penthouse, then the estate. But somewhere along the way, lost in the glitter of wealth and temptation, she had lost herself. Even when Leo found out about Julian, when they fought until raw and screaming, she didn't see it as a serious problem. She had been just playing. Repressed for so long, she had wanted to feel everything, to experience a reckless abandon. All the wealthy women she knew did it, kept handsome young men on the side to amuse themselves. It was normal, wasn't it? Their husbands were probably doing worse. None of them were getting divorced or driving their spouses to suicide. She could understand it. She could have been with Julian forever. Forever and ever. How did it come to this? How did it come to him being gone? Chloe seemed to have forgotten that the whole reason she had fought so hard to climb out of that pit was so she and her Leo could be together forever, growing old in love. When I woke up again, I was in my own bed. My head still throbbed faintly. Outside, light rain fell, just as it had been when I jumped from the 19th floor. My heart ceased. I threw open the window, but the view was of a familiar old neighborhood street bustling with people buying street food. The air was thick with the smell of cooking. Relief washed over me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Your bank account has been credited with $80 million. I gripped the phone as realization dawned. It wasn't a dream. It was real. 8 years ago, I had a workplace accident, a fall from a great height that damaged my spine and left me a quadriplegic. That night, the system appeared for the first time. It said that if I could complete a salvation mission, it would reward me with a healthy body. I agreed, and thus began 8 years with Chloe Sterling. Now, I was back in my own world. Not only did I have a healthy body, but an immense fortune as well. In this world, there would be no endless fights, no lonely nights crying into my pillow, no suffocating, drowning marriage. I let out a long, slow breath, eyes welling. The feeling of freedom was overwhelming. My life hadn't changed drastically, except for the lifetime supply of money giving me complete financial freedom. Outside of my quiet work life, I began traveling alone, sometimes to the misty, rain-soaked landscapes of the Pacific Northwest, other times to the vast, lonely deserts of the Southwest. I savored every view. I bought a modern lake house, its floor-to-ceiling windows in my bedroom looking out over sparkling water. On days I didn't travel, I would curl up in a hanging chair, soaking up the sun and reading. My cat would leap into my lap, purring contentedly. No one came home to give me the silent treatment. No one screamed at me or forced me to confront the monster I had become in the mirror. Over 2 years, I slowly rebuilt myself. I nurtured the confident, easygoing Leo the First had once been. Everything was good. A world without Chloe was nothing but blue skies. 2 years later, the memories had almost faded, until one night, after drinks with old friends, I came home and collapsed in bed, hazy from alcohol. The system appeared again. At first, I thought I was imagining it, drunk and delirious. But then, a familiar white light materialized. Host, I apologize for the intrusion, but I have no choice. You broke the rules to return. The protagonist, Chloe Sterling, has never found your body and cannot accept your death. Her obsession is deepening, and her world is on the verge of collapse. If her world is destroyed, I, as its system, will be permanently erased. Please help me. You won't stay permanently and won't need to complete a mission. You'll only have 5 hours. When the 5 hours are up, no matter the outcome, I will bring you back home. The system showed me clips of Chloe's life over the past 2 years. She ran her company, but her temperament had become dangerously volatile. Her employees lived in fear. Office vases had been shattered and replaced dozens of times. On the rare occasion a business partner mentioned my death or tried to set her up with another man, she would fix them with a chilling stare and insist I was not dead. They would flee in terror. Afterwards, she would ask her assistant if she had received messages from me. I watched in silence. I felt no pity, only a calm emptiness. But I recognized the desperation in the system's voice. It had been my only companion for 8 years in that other world. It had risked everything to bring me home because it heard my plea. It wasn't a friend, but something close. After a moment, I agreed. My farewell with Chloe had been abrupt, fueled by years of bitterness. I had left with one act of defiance, my death. It was no wonder she couldn't let go. This time, I would sever the connection completely. I would force her to accept the truth. I opened my eyes. I was back in her old home. It was late, dark, and empty. 2 years had passed, and I had almost forgotten this place. Yet every detail was a sharp reminder of the 8 years I had lived there. Nothing had changed. The house was preserved exactly as I had left it. Even the wedding photo I had smashed with my ring had been repaired and rehung. Now, my side of the photo was just a blank white space. I walked into the bedroom. My pillow lay next to hers, as if I had never left. My favorite book sat on the nightstand where I always kept it. I picked it up. The pages were yellowed, edges curled from someone having flipped through it countless times. The system told me that after I vanished, Chloe spent every sleepless night clinging to this book. All my belongings had disappeared, clothes, photos, except for this book, which she had bought for me, filled with my notes and highlights in the margins. It was the only physical proof that I had ever existed. As I stood lost in thought, I heard the front door open. It was Chloe. In 2 years, her striking features had sharpened, grown colder. The darkness in her eyes mirrored the grim winter night outside. She kicked off her heels, entered the house, and didn't turn on a light. She didn't see me in the bedroom or dim living room. She sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette, having graduated from the light menthols she used to smoke to cheap, harsh brands. The ember glowed in the dark. When the cigarette burned down, she picked up her phone and scrolled through her messages, brow furrowed. She used to ignore my texts when she was out, leaving me on read. Eventually, I stopped texting. I stopped waiting for her to come home. She covered her face with her hand. 2 years, Leo, you're really cruel, she muttered. Not even a single message. How long are you going to keep up this act before you finally give in? She impatiently shut off her phone and stared out the window, her eyes vacant and dead. Suddenly, the phone rang, shattering the silence. She glanced at the caller ID, hesitated, then answered. Ms. Sterling, this is just a reminder that your husband has been missing for 2 years now. You're eligible to come to the police station and obtain a death certificate. Chloe's face tightened. A storm brewed in her dark eyes, and the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. My husband is not dead, she hissed. None of you ever found his body, and you have the nerve to tell me he's dead? Ha, that's a trick I will never fall for. Her hand tightened on the phone, her nails digging into her palm. If anyone ever calls me again about getting a death certificate, I'll come down there and get one for them. She slammed the phone down, throwing it across the room. Her fist crashed against the glass coffee table, the sound of cracking echoing in the silence. She bowed her head, her voice a hoarse whisper. Lo, how long are you going to punish me before you come back? I watched her from the shadows, a sense of grim amusement washing over me. Come back for what? To watch her parade Julian around? To feel the shadows of her betrayal grow until they swallowed me whole? After a long moment, I stepped out of the bedroom. My voice cut through the darkness, cold and clear. Why are you still lying to yourself, Chloe? At the sound of my voice, Chloe's body shuddered. She turned her head slowly. When she saw me, she froze, staring for a long, silent moment. A light began to dawn in her eyes. She approached me cautiously, as if afraid of waking from a dream. Her hands reached out, trembling, until they finally wrapped around me in a tight embrace. She buried her face in my neck, inhaling deeply, her voice raw and muffled. Leo, you scared me so much. They all said you were dead, but I didn't believe them. I wouldn't believe them. See, I waited, and you finally came back. I pushed her away, my expression flat. Chloe, I am dead. Don't you remember? 2 years ago, right in front of you, I jumped from the 19th floor. I went down with my blessing for you and Julian while you watched. Her long lashes trembled. She looked lost, as if the reality was finally sinking in. 2 years ago, I really had died in front of her. 1 second, I was speaking to her softly. The next, I was falling backward into the abyss. No hesitation, no regret. I simply vanished from her world. Chloe's face turned white as a sheet. Her hand shook as she grabbed my shoulders. No, that's impossible. Leo, you're standing right here. You came back. After I left, she pleaded. I terminated the pregnancy. I cut off all contact with Julian. I never saw him again. Leo, can we just go back to how things were? Please. I shook my head, my gaze calm. I walked over to the window where I had jumped, pushed it open, and felt the same cold night wind on my face. Chloe, do you remember how we met? 8 years ago, the system brought me here. I appeared out of thin air in front of a destitute Chloe. She had just lost her mother and been beaten up by debt collectors. She was standing on the edge of a skyscraper, 1 foot already over the side. I literally fell out of the sky and tackled her to the ground, pinning her down. I looked at the lifeless girl beneath me and smiled. Don't you dare jump. I can help you. A flicker of life returned to her dead eyes. At the time, she was too lost in her grief to question where I had come from. Now, as the memory resurfaced, a look of shock and confusion spread across her face. Chloe, I was never from your world. I came here on a mission to save you. When a mission was over, I was supposed to leave to go back to my own world, but I didn't. I stayed because I loved you. I stayed and married you. I glanced out the window at the twinkling stars. They were as bright as they had been on our wedding night. That night, Chloe had held me and promised, Leo, you saved my life. You rewrote my destiny. If I ever betray you, I hope I get hit by a car the moment I step outside. Leo, I will make sure you live a good life. I believed her. I gave her everything, my heart, my body, my soul. Later, she built her company into an empire and kept her promise, making me the glamorous husband of the great Chloe Sterling. I didn't even have to work anymore. I just had to wait for her at home. But our conversations grew shorter. She started staying out all night. In the end, I wasn't waiting for happiness. I was waiting for the headline announcing her affair with Julian. That was when the first crack appeared between us. In the agony of our constant fighting, that crack widened until it became an unbridgeable chasm. I was on one side, and she was on the other, never to meet again. As the memories flooded back, a look of pain crossed Chloe's face. Leo, I'm so sorry. You were always there for me. No matter what I became, you never left. I got too comfortable, too confident. That's why I wanted to go looking for something new. Back then, I could have anything I wanted. I suddenly resented the quiet, ordinary life we had. I wanted to try everything I'd never had, including other men. She lowered her head, her hands clenched into tight fists. I never thought you would leave. I thought after 8 years together, you were just a part of my life, maybe even a disposable one. But after you jumped that night, I never had another full night's sleep. She looked up, eyes trembling, and reached for my hand. Leo, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I pulled my hand away sharply. Chloe, 2 years ago, when you shoved me in front of that mirror and told me I was old, that I'd lost every trace of my former self, you didn't hesitate for a second. There was no pain in your eyes. I will never forget the look of pure, unadulterated pleasure on your face as you whispered in Julian's ear. Nor will I ever forget the contempt and hatred in your eyes every time we fought. Those images, the ones that made me feel like a raving lunatic, are burned into my memory. A lover is like a flower. You watered me with the poison of your betrayal and infidelity. And I withered. Chloe's eyes were bloodshot, as if they were about to bleed. No, it wasn't like that. I was just angry. I was caught up in the fight. I didn't know. Leo, I have only ever loved you. You say you never had feelings for Julian, that you were just playing. Is that the truth? You gave him money. You gave him your time. And you gave him your protection. If that isn't a kind of love, what is? You say you love me. So what is your love for me? Is it coldness, arguments, constant conflict? If that's what your love is, I don't want any part of it. She said she never cared for him, but she bought him cars and luxury goods without batting an eye. She took him to the doctor when he was sick. She called him over when she was scared of thunderstorms. And in every fight between us, she always took his side, protecting her precious boy toy. After all those years, all those unguarded moments, how could she say there was no affection? As my words landed, Chloe sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I glanced at the time. I had 1 minute left of my 5 hours. Chloe seemed to sense it, too. She saw me leaning against the window again and reached out a trembling hand, trying to grab me. Leo, don't leave me. Please don't leave me. The system's countdown began in my ear. Chloe, I came back for 5 hours because we were only truly in love for 5 years. We loved each other once, but we don't anymore. In some cosmic ledger, Chloe's 5 years of love had bought my brief 5-hour return, but that was all. There was no love left to sustain us for another second. The temporal gateway opened. I looked at Chloe one last time. Her tears fell on my hand, hot and scalding, just as they had been 8 years ago when her heart ached for me. Goodbye, Chloe. For the last time. Leo, no. With those final words, I vanished from before her eyes, leaving her to kneel alone in the vast, empty house, her cries echoing in the silence. After I was gone, Chloe lay on the floor where I had disappeared, staring blankly at the ceiling. 2 years ago, when I had vanished after the fall, she could still lie to herself. No body meant he wasn't dead. But now she knew, I was never coming back. She would never see me again in this world. They had been together for 8 years, the most precious years of her life. I had taught her to believe and love again, to learn how to love. Her life plan had been simple: marry me, have a child, and live happily ever after. She had achieved the first goal, but fate had other plans. The love story took a turn, and the ending was nothing like she had imagined. All the beauty came to a screeching halt in their 3rd year of marriage. When that young model with ambition in his eyes threw himself at her, she had asked for his name on a whim. Julian. It was close enough to Leo. That night, she let him stay. From there, she did one inexplicable thing after another until she looked up and realized they were past the point of no return. She remembered that she and I had almost had a child once, but she never got to feel the joy of being a mother. That child was lost because of her betrayal, a secret she had kept from me. Then Julian had told her she was pregnant again. At first, she was scared, lost. But the joy of a new life clouded her judgment, and she believed Julian's lie that I had tried to harm them. That momentary lapse in judgment had cost her everything. Later, when her head was clear, she realized it was all a lie Julian had concocted to secure his position. She panicked and terminated the pregnancy, hoping it would be enough to earn my forgiveness. Julian had accused her of being cruel, of ruining his life. She had simply smiled down at him from her position of power. You should have known this was a possible outcome the moment you chose to be my affair. She did it all as penance, hoping the real Leo hiding somewhere would see how truly sorry she was. But after 2 years of waiting, her reward wasn't forgiveness. It was this final, soul-crushing goodbye. After a long time, Chloe crawled to her feet and slowly walked to the open window. She looked down. It was an endless, dark abyss. But I had been so resolute when I jumped. Not a flicker of regret. She spread her arms and closed her eyes, feeling the wind whip around her. He had said that when he jumped, he would go home. If she jumped, would she get to see him too? A moment later, without any hesitation, she leaned forward and fell. She ended her life at the age of 26. With her death, the salvation mission for the protagonist, Chloe Sterling, was officially complete. The alternate world stabilized and began to run normally again. The system let out a long, low hum, and in a rumble of cosmic machinery, it began a new cycle.